everyone. I'm Andrew Hedges, but you can read that. I'm going to talk about hiring junior developers, and this talk is sort of aimed at hiring managers, anybody in a tech leadership position, so if you're in a mentorship kind of role, but it also can apply to project managers and product owners and people on the business side as well. You have a role to play in this whole thing as well. So I'm currently teaching a full stack web development course for PDX Code Guild. Yeah, two of my students are here, way in the back. Travis and Jeff. I'm a developer by trade. I've been doing web development for 18 and a half years professionally. Spent the last 5 years as an engineering manager hiring dozens of developers. So that's kind of what I bring to this discussion. It seems like everyone's struggling to hire great people. So there's weird statistics about how many, there's going to be 1 million open jobs and all these kind of like unfilled programming jobs. It's not quite true. What that is that there's going to be 1 million fewer computer science grads than there are computer science related jobs by 2020. That's what the actual statistic is, in case you hear that statistic. But anyways, the point is that it's kind of a struggle to hire great people, and the weird thing about that is that a lot of organizations are hesitant to hire junior developers, and despite the fact that they need to hire people, they need bodies, they need people kind of doing the work. And I get it. There's a lot of what I call PLEs, perfectly logical explanations for that. But tonight I'm going to advocate that instead of fighting over a small handful of senior people, that you can fill that seat tomorrow with a junior developer and grow the person into the role. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that. So I'm going to meet the pipeline. So I'm going to talk just briefly about 3 junior developers here in Portland that I know. On the far left is Jeffrey Bentley, and he's actually a student in my class, a classmate of Jeff and Travis back there. Jeffrey is 54 years old. He was just laid off from his job as testing circuit boards. So he's now trying to figure out what to do next. He actually, to his credit, he kind of sees this as an opportunity, right? So he got some help from the state to pay for the code school, and now he's retooling. He's going to become a developer at 54 years old. He's going to be on the job market in about 7 weeks. Jeffrey is, and he's working really hard at it. He has a great attitude, and he's getting better every day. So that's one person. Xavier Finch in the middle. He's a self-taught developer. He started off as a designer, UX designer, graphic designer. He's a great guy. He's a super voracious learner. He's always learning, trying to get better at his craft. And he's actually been in a situation recently where he was in an organization where they didn't really have the support structures in place for junior developers. And so it didn't work out, but I don't blame him at all. He's great. I think that the organization really didn't know kind of what to do with him. Like that, they didn't know kind of how to put the right support structures in place. And I'm going to talk about how to do that. On the right is Kelly DeVries, and some of you may know her. I know there's one person in the room who knows her well, her boss actually, but she works at Lumen Learning, and she is a recent grad of Epicodus in town, and she also organizes a junior developer meetup. But she talks about the great experience that she's having in her job right now, where with great mentorship and just kind of the right kind of balance between challenge and support, that she's thriving and learning every day. So these are the people that are kind of out there, junior developers that are they are the people that you could be hiring if you're not already. So in general, junior developers are comprised of a higher percentage of women and people of color than the industry generally. Coding boot camps in particular, they tend to have twice the percentage of women compared to computer science programs, and they're nearly 40% non-white. So that's a little bit higher than the general population as well. The other thing is boot camp grads tend to have come from careers in other industries, so they bring that experience to the job, and they've kind of, as one junior developer I know told me, that we know how to adult. Like we have that down. We need to learn this domain and kind of how to be productive as a developer. So there's been some talk already tonight about diversity, and the junior developers can bring diversity to your organizations. So From my perspective, there are exactly two legitimate reasons why not to hire junior developers. One is that you're at a very small company with a short financial runway, and you need all hands on deck being insanely productive to have any chance to survive. Totally makes sense. The other is, and I know there's some kids here, is that you don't have your stuff together. You don't have your act together. Okay, those are the only two reasons. So you either have a very legitimate, like, existential, like, the company's going to go under if we don't have, like, the maximum productivity from everybody from day one, or you're probably making excuses for why you can't have junior developers on your team because, well, we don't have this worked out. So I'm going to talk about four things that you can do four things that an organization can provide or can do to kind of better support junior developers. So break it down to structure, context, process, and support. So structure is things like documentation, having good documentation about how to set up a development environment, how to merge code, how to get code out to production. It means breaking up tasks into kind of manageable chunks. So nothing that's too big and overwhelming, but having it kind of pretty well laid out. It also means things like regular team meetings where people are sharing information and kind of learning from each other. Regular one-on-ones with a manager or a mentor who's asking about things other than the project work. So kind of paying attention to that person and their career growth and how are they doing, are they fitting in, and are they feeling supported enough? So context, that's talking about how the work that the junior developer fits into the larger organization, the goals of the organization. Netflix is one of the best examples of this. They are the second most profitable company per employee in the world. And they're only about 1,000 something employees, but one of their huge things they do is to provide as much information to everybody in the company as they possibly can about what the goals are, 3 months out, 6 months out, 5 years out, and then trust the people to kind of help the company get there. Another thing you can do for context is to provide a backlog of issues with clear done criteria. I mean, it sounds like a simple thing, right? But if you have issues, like these things need to be fixed, but there's no, done criteria, there's no kind of, what that means is, there's no kind of spelled out, like this is success for this issue. It's going to be a lot harder for a junior developer to know when that's done. A senior person who's seen that same issue several times in their career would be like, okay, yeah, I know what to do for that, but it's going to be a little harder for a junior developer. Context also, I think, it's a little bit about modeling the act of asking questions. It's super important to be able to just speak up and kind of put your ego aside and ask the stupid question, right? And it's the best thing you can do to kind of encourage your junior developers to do that is to model that activity yourself. The other thing I think that's maybe one of the most important things, and this is straight from a junior developer that I know, she said that giving plenty of feedback, constructive of course, but giving feedback all the time, that's what helps you early in your career to get better. You don't know whether you're doing something right or something wrong or could be improved or something, but just giving all the feedback, tons and tons of feedback all the time is going to be helpful to a new person. All right, so process. Encourage pair programming. It's in my class we actually do this where we have students, they sit with each other and they're able to get farther faster because they have somebody right there to kind of bounce ideas off of. I don't say require pair programming because it's not for all situations and it's not even for all people, but it's a really good practice to kind of encourage. I could say more about that. Anyway, one thing I would require is code reviews. So if you're not doing code reviews right now, you probably should be, and setting up systems to allow senior people to comment, again, in a constructive, kind of supportive way on the code of junior developers, because it's one of the best ways for them to learn what the kind of better practices are. So something else that I think we all could do a better job of is to stop viewing interpersonal skills as soft skills and start viewing them as core skills. It's one of, yeah. I firmly believe that coding is as much a social activity as it is a technical activity. There's pair programming, you can list off a bunch of things, but it's gathering requirements. There's all kinds of activities that you do as a developer that you're going to do better if you can just relate to other people, right? So those things are, I think, essential to the job. One of the other process things that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum of that is implementing automated testing and build processes. So change becomes routine. It's not a scary thing to make a change or to push something into production. It should be, we can do this all the time, and if we make a mistake, we'll just change it because we have systems in place to help us recover quickly from those things. And that's going to put junior developers at ease, I think. All right, so support. I think one of the kind of really important things is that we are trying to hire more diverse workforces, right? But the problem is not just the pipeline, it's also that those people tend to, we have a leaky pipeline at the moment, where women, people of color, people who are in any underrepresented group tend to leave the industry earlier than people who are kind of maybe in the more mainstream or whatever you want to call it. So I think we need to try to fix that somehow. And one of the things we can do is to train employees and especially managers to recognize things like microaggressions, to recognize their own biases in hiring, in how they treat people in a meeting setting or for promotions. Like there's all these kind of situations where the person who has the power, if they're not aware of their biases and they're not kind of actively trying to kind of mitigate that to some degree, that bias can kind of be perpetuated throughout the organization. Something else in terms of support, and this is a little bit more practical maybe, it's that we need to provide guardrails for junior developers. So you find ways for the juniors to win. So you don't just day one throw them into the middle of the crazy whole application, but you find a piece of the application that's relatively isolated and let them have some successes by contributing to that piece of it, and then start to branch out. And when they have those wins, publicly celebrate the successes. It's nothing that kind of gives you confidence more than being called out in a meeting for having done something right or having fixed a bug or whatever the thing is. So, yeah. So did you notice anything about all the things that I mentioned? Something they might have in common. Not only do they help junior developers thrive, but they help everyone thrive, right? These are the things you should be doing anyway. But so many technical organizations do some of these things, or they want to do better at other things. But if you know that you want to hire more good people faster and want to keep them around, that might be some incentive to kind of to get some of these things in place that you may have been putting off. If it all sounds like common sense to you, that's actually great, because that means you understand these things and you're probably working on trying to get these things implemented anyway. This is Danielle Yu. She worked for me. I hired her onto a very senior team when she had maybe 2 years experience in the industry, and she was employee number 9 on my team. And she was kind of thrown into the deep end. And I'm not going to claim that I did everything right with Danielle, but she was thrown into the deep end in some really stressful, kind of high-profile projects, but with a ton of support and mentorship, not only from me, but from the other developers on the team. And she was able to very quickly grow technically, as well as kind of get some of that kind of sorted, so she felt comfortable on the technical side of things, and then take on leadership. I mean, within a year of being on my team, she was leading projects. So it's a year, I don't know if that sounds like a long time to people, but it's not really very long in terms of somebody's career, right? So these are people who are fairly new to programming. You can kind of bring them in, and with enough support, they're going to be stars before you know it. So I guess the struggle is real, right? Like the kind of big takeaway is just to get your act together and start hiring junior developers. Thank you.